I will defend him. The words echoed to the federal courtroom like a thunderclap. Every head turned. Every conversation stopped. The judge looked up from his bench in complete shock. What would you do if your boss's million-dollar attorneys abandoned him right in the middle of his trial? When the cameras are rolling, the press is circling like vultures, and a billionaire CEO sits alone defenseless, most people would walk away. Most people would say, not my problem. Most people would protect themselves first. But Darius Walton wasn't most people. This black driver had just marched into a courtroom full of power brokers, expensive suits, and legal eagles who'd spent years in law school. He had no degree, no legal training, no business being there. Yet there he stood, jaw set, declaring his intention to defend Howard Ames, the tech billionaire whose world had just collapsed around him. The gallery erupted in laughter. Court officials exchanged bewildered looks. Even the prosecutors seemed confused. Who did this driver think he was? But what happened next didn't just save a billionaire's reputation. It shattered every assumption about loyalty, courage, and who really has your back when the world turns against you. If you believe loyalty matters more than status, hit that like button because this story will blow your mind. Let me tell you about Darius Walton. For 5 years, he'd been the invisible man behind one of America's most powerful CEOs. While Howard Ames commanded boardrooms and built a tech empire worth billions, Darius navigated the city streets with quiet precision. He wasn't just a driver. He was Howard's anchor to reality. Darius knew every shortcut through downtown traffic, every back entrance to avoid paparazzi, and exactly how Howard liked his coffee during those brutal 16-hour days. But here's what made Darius different. He paid attention to the man, not just the money. While others saw Howard Ames as a ruthless businessman, Darius witnessed the late-night stops at homeless shelters, the anonymous donations, the phone calls to struggling employees' families, the side of Howard that never made the business magazines. Howard respected Darius in return, not because he had to, but because Darius earned it through integrity. No gossip to tabloids. No selling stories for quick cash. Just steady, dependable loyalty that money couldn't buy. Their relationship transcended the typical boss-employee dynamic. Howard trusted Darius with his schedule, his family's safety, and his unguarded moments between meetings. In the world of corporate America, where million-dollar handshakes happen over lunch and billion-dollar deals get made in penthouse offices, Darius represented something rare: authentic character. He drove the car, but Howard depended on him for so much more. Little did either man know that 5 years of building trust would soon be tested in the most public, high-stakes arena possible. Because when you're fighting for your life, you don't need lawyers who work for paychecks. You need someone who believes in who you really are. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning when the FBI showed up at Howard's office. Insider trading, securities fraud, federal charges that could destroy everything Howard had built over 2 decades. The accusations hit like a financial earthquake, sending shockwaves through the tech industry. The media went wild. Tech titan falls, screamed the headlines. Billionaire's empire crumbles. Cable news channels ran his photo next to words like scandal and corruption every hour. Howard's legal team initially stood strong. Million-dollar attorneys with Harvard degrees and decades of corporate defense experience. They held press conferences, issued statements, projected confidence. We will vigorously defend Mr. Ames against these baseless charges. For months they battled, motions filed, evidence challenged, character witnesses lined up. The legal machine operated at full capacity, burning through retainer fees faster than Howard's companies generated revenue. But federal prosecutors don't play games. They came with boxes of documents, recorded phone calls, and a narrative that painted Howard as a greedy executive who manipulated stock prices for personal gain. As the trial progressed, something shifted. The confident legal team started looking nervous. Private conversations grew heated. Billable hours increased while actual progress seemed to stall. Then came the moment that shattered Howard's world. Mid-trial, with cameras rolling and reporters packed into every available seat, Howard's lead attorney approached the bench. "Your Honor, we are withdrawing from this case effective immediately." Just like that. Gone. The courtroom buzzed with confusion. Howard sat frozen, watching his $1 million defense team pack their briefcases and walk out. No explanation to the press. No transition plan. Just abandonment when he needed them most. Have you ever been left behind when you needed support the most? Because what happened next was absolutely heartbreaking. The man who once commanded respect from world leaders now sat alone at the defendant's table, facing federal prosecutors with no one in his corner. Flash bulbs exploded. Reporters whispered. The vultures circled closer. Outside the courthouse, Darius sat in the black sedan, watching through tinted windows as reporters swarmed the entrance like hungry sharks. He'd driven Howard here that morning, same as always. Professional, punctual, ready to wait however long it took. But this wasn't like any other day. Through the courthouse windows, he could see the chaos inside. Howard sitting alone. The abandoned legal table. The prosecutors closing in for the kill. Darius gripped T. Who was he to walk into that courtroom? A driver with a high school diploma facing off against federal prosecutors and Ivy League attorneys? The press would tear him apart. The judge might hold him in contempt. Howard's reputation could get even worse. But memories flooded back. The night Howard stopped the car to help an elderly woman change her flat tire in the rain. The anonymous Christmas bonuses he sent to struggling employees' families. The scholarship fund he quietly established for underprivileged kids, never seeking credit or recognition. The phone calls Darius overheard when Howard thought no one was listening. Calls to cancer patients, promising their medical bills would be covered. Calls to single mothers facing eviction, ensuring they'd have housing. These weren't publicity stunts. These were the actions of a man who cared deeply but never wanted applause. That's the Howard Ames that Darius knew, not the caricature being painted in newspapers or the monster prosecutors were describing. His hands stopped trembling. His jaw set with determination. Loyalty runs deeper than fear. Darius stepped out of that car, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the courthouse entrance. Every step felt like crossing a battlefield, but he didn't hesitate. The man who had spent 5 years in the background was about to step into the spotlight and change everything. You want to know who Howard Ames really is? Darius's voice cut through the stunned courtroom. Let me tell you what his $1 million lawyers never bothered to mention. His steering wheel, his mind racing. The laughter stopped. Every eye in that room focused on the man in the modest suit, standing where Harvard-educated attorneys once sat. 3 months ago, on a rainy Thursday night, we were driving home from a board meeting. Howard saw an elderly woman with a flat tire on the side of the highway. He didn't call AAA. He didn't send an assistant. He got out of that car himself, in his $1,000 suit, and changed her tire in the pouring rain. Jurors leaned forward. The skeptical expressions began to soften. Last Christmas, Howard found out one of his janitors, a single mother named Maria, was facing eviction. You know what he did? He didn't just pay her rent. He bought the entire building and turned it into affordable housing for 12 families. No press release, no tax write-off publicity, just quiet generosity. The prosecutors exchanged uncomfortable glances. This wasn't the narrative they'd built their case around. When little Tommy Rodriguez needed heart surgery and his family couldn't afford it, Howard didn't send a check from corporate charity funds. He visited that boy in the hospital, personally guaranteed every medical bill, sat with that family through 3 surgeries. A female juror wiped her eyes. The courtroom atmosphere had completely transformed. I've driven this man for 5 years. I've seen him at his lowest moments and his highest victories. I've watched him sacrifice profit to keep employees during tough times. I've heard him on phone calls, thinking no one was listening, promising college scholarships to kids he's never met. Darius paused, his voice growing stronger. Those lawyers you just saw walk away, they knew Howard's bank account. I know Howard's heart. They could recite his financial statements. I've witnessed his character when he thought nobody was watching. The room was dead silent. This wasn't legal expertise or courtroom manipulation. This was something much more powerful. Truth delivered with unshakable conviction. That's the man I will defend, not because he pays me, but because he deserves someone who actually knows who he is. The impact was immediate and undeniable. Within hours, the judge dismissed the charges for lack of substantial evidence. But more importantly, the court of public opinion had completely reversed its verdict. The same reporters who arrived to cover a billionaire's downfall were now writing about loyalty, courage, and the power of standing up for truth. Drivers defend Saves-O became the headline that defined the story. Howard walked out of that courthouse a free man, but the dynamic between him and Darius had forever changed. This wasn't employer and employee anymore. This was mutual respect between two men who understood what real loyalty looked like. The business world took notice. Corporate executives across the country started asking themselves, who would defend me if everything fell apart? Most realized they didn't have an answer. Darius became a legend in business circles, not because he had money or education, but because he demonstrated something rare in corporate America, authentic character that couldn't be bought or sold. Speaking engagements followed, interview requests, job offers from Fortune 500 companies who suddenly understood that loyalty trumps credentials. But Darius stayed with Howard, not out of obligation, but out of choice. The man who'd once been invisible in the driver's seat had become the most visible example of what it means to stand by your principles when everyone else walks away. What kind of loyalty would you show in this situation? Would you risk everything to defend someone you believed in? Tell us in the comments below. Today, Darius Walton's story is told in business schools and corporate boardrooms across America, not as a case study in legal strategy, but as a masterclass in loyalty and courage. He proved that sometimes the person everyone overlooks is exactly the person you need when everything falls apart. While million-dollar attorneys calculated risk versus reward, Darius calculated right versus wrong. His declaration, "I will defend him," became more than just words in a courtroom. It became a battle cry for anyone who's ever been underestimated, anyone who's ever stood up for what they believed in despite impossible odds. The truth is, we all have moments when we must choose between safety and standing up, between protecting ourselves and protecting others, between walking away and walking forward. Darius chose to walk forward. He chose loyalty over logic, courage over comfort, character over career advancement. And in doing so, he didn't just save Howard Ames. He saved the idea that authentic relationships still matter in a world obsessed with transactions. If this story inspired you to think about the loyalty you show to others, make sure to subscribe for more stories that prove ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Sometimes the person sitting in the driver's seat is the one driving toward justice.